Hundreds of residents of Tel Aviv have opted to sleep in underground subway stations as the threat of Iranian strikes continues to loom. The conflict has now entered its second week, with the intensity of strikes only increasing. On Thursday, an Iranian attack struck a hospital complex and residential buildings in southern Israel, wounding at least 240 people. Another missile also struck the vicinity of the European Union delegation in Tel Aviv. A spokesperson for the European Commission stated that all personnel were safe, but expressed grave concern that diplomatic premises were damaged in the attacks. The area struck houses several European embassies, including those from the Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, North Macedonia, and Ireland. In light of the strikes, Israel's defense minister Israel Katz stressed that Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, quote, cannot continue to exist. In a post on X, Katz called Khamenei a dictator and labeled him a modern-day Hitler. The U.S. appears to be weighing options as it too considers joining the conflict militarily. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly called on Iran to unconditionally surrender and says he'll decide within 2 weeks on whether or not to directly attack. Trump noted that the 2 weeks are to allow for any potential diplomatic solutions to run their course before further escalating regional tensions.
Several European foreign ministers will meet with their Iranian counterparts in Geneva to discuss Iran's nuclear program on Friday. Top diplomats from France, Germany and the United Kingdom will be meeting with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. The EU previously acted as a key facilitator of a UN-brokered agreement back in 2015, which aimed at lifting sanctions in exchange for Iran's compliance with nuclear obligations. The US and Iran held nearly 2 months of nuclear talks mediated by Oman before Israel's major attack on Iran last Friday, to which Iran responded with missile strikes.
In an interview with Euronews, Ali Bahraini, Iran's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, said Europe is partly to blame for intensifying hostilities between Israel and Iran because its leaders have failed to condemn Israel's aggression. It comes a day before the foreign ministers of France, Germany and the UK meet with their Iranian counterpart in Geneva to discuss Iran's nuclear program.
First of all, we will explain for E3 about the failures they have had and the shortcomings that they have had, which has resulted to this situation. Because Europe did not try to stop Israel from committing such a crime, and because Europe sometimes, and some of them, unfortunately, are justifying the aggression committed by Israel. The impunity which has been given to Israel is something which encourages that entity to continue committing new crimes. And this impunity is because of inaction by Europeans, by United States, and the Security Council.
Bahraini also warned that Iran would respond directly to the U.S. if it becomes involved, and did not rule out strikes on the country.
It's quite clear for us that the United States has been a complicit to what Israel is doing now, the crime that Israel is committing against Iranian people. If United States crosses some red lines, then it will receive the same reaction we gave to Israel. We will very firmly respond to the United States if it crosses the red lines.
Iran will respond to the United States in the United States?
Our military forces are monitoring the situation. It is their domain to decide how to react, and they know where the United States should be attacked.
Bahraini told Euronews that there is still a window for diplomacy to reach a new nuclear deal, but first the fighting with Israel has to stop. For nearly a week, Israel and Iran have been trading strikes in an escalating conflict that has already claimed hundreds of lives. In an interview with Euronews, Israel's ambassador to the EU and NATO, Haim Regev, said Israel had no choice but to attack.
I would like to mention that Iran poses a threat not only to Israel, to the region and also to Europe. They are involved in promoting terror. They are involved in provocation. They are involved in many acts, European prisoner they hold, and so they are already the main cause for instability in the region and for the world.
In his view, Israel's strikes on Iran's military capabilities also indirectly benefit Ukraine.
Iran is part of the group, anti-Western group, the group that support Russia in the war. By the way, harming Iranian missiles facilities is saving Ukrainian life. By harming their ability to supply missiles and drones to Russia, by that we are contributing or diminishing their capability to harm through Russia, Ukrainian.
While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he wouldn't rule out targeting Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei, Regev said regime change is not the main goal.
The target of this military operation is to remove the nuclear threat and the missile threat. As I mentioned, Iran have a plan, a concrete and operative plan. And this is the main goals of our military operation right now.
At the same time, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said on Thursday that to achieve the military objectives, Khamenei should no longer continue to exist.
Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez rejected a NATO proposal to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP. The proposal is due to be announced next week at the NATO Leaders Summit in The Hague. The Spanish premier called the proposal unreasonable. In a letter sent to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Sanchez stated that his country cannot commit to any spending targets in terms of GDP. Any agreement to adopt a new spending guideline must be made with the consensus of all 32 NATO member countries. Sanchez's decision risks derailing next week's summit, which U.S. President Donald Trump is set to attend. Trump has on numerous occasions threatened to pull the U.S. out of NATO if members don't increase defense spending to at least 5%. Spain is the lowest spender on defense in the entire alliance, with last year's defense expenditure totaling less than 2% of GDP. And NATO officials said on Thursday that discussions between allies are ongoing about a potential new spending plan. The Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda are set to sign a peace agreement. The deal was brokered by the United States and is set to be signed on the 27th of June. The provisional agreement announced by the U.S. State Department covers issues including disarmament, the integration of non-state armed groups, and the return of refugees and internally displaced people in eastern DRC. Eastern DRC has been gripped by violent conflict spanning back decades. Several armed groups are competing for access to precious natural resources including gold, copper, cobalt, and lithium. Congo has accused its neighbor Rwanda of backing one of the largest groups in the conflict, known as the M23. The UN estimates that 4,000 of the group's fighters are troops from Rwanda, though Kigali has strongly rejected those allegations. M23 is one of approximately 100 armed groups involved in the conflict vying for control in the region. Congo and Rwanda are not formally at war, and in the past have held peace talks aimed at resolving disputes in eastern DRC. Angola stepped down in March as mediator between the two countries after several attempts at brokering peace. Other nations like Qatar also attempted to mediate the conflict in the past with no success. Wake Up is the chorus of the song that Jenny BSG choreographed for the Dance for Refugees campaign. The dancer spoke to Euronews about this call for action ahead of World Refugee Day, celebrated every year on the 20th of June.
Fascinating to me because Wake Up means also everyone needs to wake up. It's time to talk about it. It's time to help. It's time to react. We can't stay silent. We have to speak up for oppressed people. And this is what I'm doing.
The social media campaign challenges people to post their versions of the choreography on Instagram and donates funds. It's aimed primarily at young people who Jenny works with at her dance school and when she travels abroad.
Try to target the new generation because for me, they are the change. They can do the difference in this world. And dance was, for me, the good way to attract attention and to change this narrative, to put, to celebrate the strength, the potential, the resilience of refugees.
Jenny BSG was born in Belgium where her family sought refuge from the war in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A background that left its mark on the artist and led her to activism in collaboration with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees.
My family, they fled violence in the 90s, and my two elder brothers, they spent time in refugee camp. My mother, she has experienced displacement. My dad too, violence, fear, struggle. Today, I'm the living proof that refugees' background doesn't limit it doesn't define the limits of refugee. It defines their strengths.
The United Nations says there are currently 123 million forcibly displaced people worldwide, twice more than a decade ago. Almost 37 million of them are refugees. The organization warns that recent drastic cuts in humanitarian aid funding are putting their lives at risk.